Get Pucked. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Vito, Matt, and Dave here with you this time around.
He's back.
The Trenta Due. He's back. I know it's going to make a bunch of our listeners very happy, and it makes us very happy. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you.
We are in September, gentlemen, and in September there is hockey. So basically, as far as I'm concerned, the summer is done. Hockey season has started, just about. We got the rookies that are going to be coming up. We got the guys who are getting snapshots all over the place of them back on the ice, all coming back to the mecca of hockey in Montreal. It's very exciting times. So, of course, since we're talking hockey, there's one or two things I wanted to talk to you guys about. And, there's not been a lot of movement since the very last time we talked. There hasn't been a lot of changes with the team. No real big storylines. So just more general kind of things to talk about. And one thing that piqued my interest the most, and this was, again, a question that was posed, and a lot of people had a lot of opinions about this. Do you want, in your opinion, I should say it this way, in your opinion, would it be better for the team to have another bottom 5 year or actually take that next step? Which the next step, I'm not saying is playoffs this year. I'm saying perhaps a couple of points out of a playoff spot. You know what I mean? Is it which will land them somewhere likely in the draft? I don't know. Let's call it, early teens, right? They'll probably be around there if that's the next step. They went from first overall pick to a fifth. Now let's say the next logical progression is something like they'll pick in the, 12, 13, 14 range. What do you think is better? And then I'll ask you, what would you prefer? So twofold. What is better for the team? And tell me why. And then tell me what you personally would prefer. Dave, since it's been so long, we'll start with you, baby. Let's go.
All right. What's better is obviously a bottom 5 finish. I think that, you always want the best player possible in the draft, and you're going to get that in the top 5 for sure. It's a tough question because there is value in, them kind of competing a little bit and seeing what they got when the team's actually competing and trying to win games as opposed to like no pressure, everyone hands off. It's, teams right now, they're not preparing for the Canadiens, right? They see the Canadiens on the schedule. They're focusing their team. They're not trying to shut down Cole Caulfield yet. They're not trying to shut down because it doesn't really matter. They probably, odds are they're going to win the game, with a little preparation compared to other teams. That's in my opinion. That's how it runs. So to me, I think there is a lot of value in competing and actually, playoff spot or not. I don't think that's probably necessarily realistic, but we've seen crazier things happen, right? Like this is a young group. They're eager, and a lot of teams are probably going to take them for granted this year, and they could sneak in some wins here or there. Do I think that will happen? No, but I definitely do see value in it. In a team, trying to at least better themselves and not just drop down and see what happens. For that, they'll need to stay healthy, obviously, which has been their Achilles heel for the past 7,000 years. But I think, honestly, that's the most important part is you want to see these guys, how they perform when they have to win games and when teams are preparing for them. That's what I want to see, especially in this development. I mean, it's been a few years now. Let's start seeing a little bit of progress, I think. But there's no harm in finishing bottom 5 either. I mean, I'm getting that pick. I think that's ultimately, if you're looking at the long term, of the franchise, I think probably another bottom 5 finish is great. But I don't want to see it.
Okay, so that's my takeaway. So, and I think a lot of people perhaps feel the same way about you. Would another bottom pick? Or top pick for that matter, by finishing bottom 5 be beneficial for the team? Quite obviously, yes. But I think most fans are at the stage now that they're like, you got a first overall, you got a fifth overall. You've tweaked the team a bit. You got very young, very skilled. Perhaps it's time to see a little bit of progression. Perfectly valid. I'm right there with you. Vito, what do you think?
What are we talking about here? It's the rebuild basically just started. You know what I mean? It's been one full calendar year of this quote-unquote rebuild. You have to get another bottom 5 pick. I would even say try to go for a bottom 3. Because if you look at the projected players for the next draft, top 3 pick, but you know what I mean. The majority of them are, the top 3 are projected to be wingers and centers, so they're forwards, and then it's defensemen. And Montreal just drafted their defenseman last draft. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so you have to, if they're gonna fail, if you want to call it that, then fail for a top 3 pick, not a top 5. But at the same time, it's a rebuild year. So we're going to be looking at a team losing for the next 3 years at least. Now, will we see some progression? Only if to what Dave said, is if they stay healthy. If they stay healthy, then you might see them finishing, closer to 10. But if they're going to go through another injury-riddled season, then start tanking. Do what you got to do to be in the bottom 3.
I mean, there's some pretty hot takes in there for a second. Let me see if I can just backtrack this just for a moment, because I did not know your stance on this, and I find that fascinating. So you think we're only year 1 of the rebuild?
It's been 1 calendar year.
Under the Gorton Hughes regime, they inherited the later half of the previous season, but 1 full year, yes.
They got hired at the end of a season.
But you think the end tenure of Bergevin, there was no, hey, we realize this team is not going anywhere, we're starting to do some tools.
No, we as fans realized that they weren't going anywhere. He went and get Christian Dvorak, signed Armia, did all these things to try to salvage his career with the Montreal Canadiens. And then Kent Hughes got into the picture afterwards. Well, first was Jeff Gordon, then Kent Hughes. So, yeah.
Okay. But hold on a second, because I think a lot of people would agree that last year was a write-off, the year before was a write-off, and they're like, okay, maybe 1 more year. That's why I asked the question, is 1 more year palatable for the majority, do you think? But you then threw out, they're going to be bad and rebuilding for the next 3 years, and to expect them to be bad for 3 more years.
I said a while ago that it's going to be likely 5 years. Now, as the Montreal's cupboard in terms of prospects full, it's up. There's assets that can be moved, acquire other things, and make the team better, sure. But they're still missing 2 key positions. They're still missing high-end offensive talent. I'm talking about high-end, and a goalie, right? Yeah. Now, they believe they may have it with Fowler. Who knows? The jury's still out on that one. I like everything that we got to see with Fowler.
Very young, yeah.
And it's still years away. So you still have those until you could literally say, you look at your depth and say every position's more or less check. Then you can't really say.
Right. Hold on a second.
Yeah,
Hold on 1 second. I asked it to both of you. Barring the injuries last year, which again, just to remind some people who might have forgotten, was a record number of man games lost. If the entire team did not get injured at any given point last year, is the team that was iced last year a bottom 5 team?
Close to it. I don't think the injuries. Yeah, I agree with that take. I don't think it's I don't think it's bottom 5 necessarily, but it's close to it. It wouldn't be a shock of me.
Is it 6 or is it 10?
No, 8, 9, 10, around there.
You think they're the 8, 9, 10th worst team in the league?
Yeah,
last year,
pretty much. Yeah, last year. If everybody was healthy and playing, yeah.
Are they an improved team this year from last year? So suffice to say, if that's the case, if you think 8, 9, 10 last year, it is likely that they are 10, 11, 12 this year. Is that what you're saying?
9, 10,
I mean, they're
11.
improved. Are they that improved? And the thing is, the way to tell a rebuild, right, to me, is whether you're making any moves to make your team better in the short term. And they've done none of that, right? They haven't. I mean, like, they're taking risks on guys like quote unquote risks with a guy like Newhook, and they're taking on projects more than they're taking on like, oh, I want to bolster my D line, I want to get a goalie for this run. Like, they're not doing that whatsoever. They're taking on projects and they're taking on contract, whatever the case may be, but they're not progressing in sense of like, oh, they're going out to get a stud to play in the top 6, and they haven't done that at all.
No, I think that's fair. And I think to Vito's point, I think ultimately it comes down to there is still too many holes, big holes that need to be filled, that you can't just go and grab one guy and then suddenly you're competing.
Of course.
That said, however, my stance on this team is different than both of yours. I don't think that they're going to compete for a playoff spot. Don't misunderstand. But I certainly think that this team is much further along in this rebuild than perhaps you guys are saying they are, which to me means I want competition this year. I would not want to see them finish bottom 5, no matter how good the draft is. I would like to see them compete right to the end. maybe be 5-6 points away from a playoff spot, not make the playoff by like a game or something, like be a little bit out, but compete, show each player on the team taking that next step, showing the whole collective being a little bit better as a unit, show improvements on the power play. The goaltending situation, I put to the side because I don't think any of the 3 current goalies that are on the team are the goalie of the future. So to me, it doesn't matter what happens there. If Montembeault ends up having a world beater of a season, so be it. That's interesting, and we take it from there. But I'm not looking at goaltending. I'm looking at the young defensemen taking a step forward. I'm looking at the forwards taking that next progression, and I think it's important that they do that this year and not quote unquote tank or be a terrible team.
They're gonna be competitive. They're gonna be entertaining to watch. I think even Martin St. Louis' coaching style allows them to be an entertaining team. They're gonna be speedy. But to Dave's point, when he said that they've taken on projects, when a team is taking on quote unquote projects, is because they know that it's going to take some time for these projects to come to a certain maturity if they even work out. So that means they have the luxury of time to work on these projects.
It took Doc a year, 1 season.
But I'm
not saying he's there. But you can see that right away the project is worked out.
So I think you're setting yourself up for failure if that's what you think. I think that the project is more than just a 1 year on a useless season to seeing how, he's fixed and Kirby Dach's going forward. I'm not as confident in you. You did. You said it took him 1 year to get to.
I said they took on a project. Yeah. See, to me, a project is a slow incremental progression. I think the difference between the Kirby Dach player that was on the Blackhawks that came, which was a question mark, versus the player that played for that whole season, nobody can deny that wasn't an incredibly improved player. And you can only deduce that there's no reason to regress this season. He either stays the same or takes the next step. I mean, it's still, you've won. Well, how not? You're going to say he's going to regress this year? What indicators are there for that?
It's very possible he regresses. I mean, you came into a new system. You were given all the opportunities in the world to play with great talented guys. You had no pressure whatsoever, realistically, on you. And
there's
so
still no pressure, though.
I mean, there is a little bit of pressure because now people are going to want to see him in that 2C spot. People are going to want to see him. Suzuki gets injured for a stretch of games. He's going to have to take over that 1C spot.
Yes.
The pressure is going to be much more this year than it was last year. Last year, it was it's going to be like New Hook this year. Whatever. If it fails, who cares? Nobody really minds that much. Now it's okay. Everybody's like Matt, I think, penciled in Kirby Dach, top 6 minimum, maybe even. So I see some people slotting him on the top line alongside on the wing, which I don't get at all. But that's what people see him: first line or a second line guy, locked in. And I think, to me, that's putting the cart before the horse. I don't even know what it is. I'm always wary of people having good seasons under new circumstances, under a new head coach, and in garbage time where nothing matters and all of it. You have hands off. You don't have to play defense. You don't have to do anything.
I mean,
the other reason why I think that the Montreal Canadiens are going to struggle this year is mainly because every team in their division is much better than them right now. It's one of the strongest divisions in the league. One of them. I would give it more to the Metropolitan, but I mean, when you look at the teams ahead of them, they're, whether it's on paper or on ice, they're better. Now, can Montreal surprise and beat some of them because teams are underestimating them? Yeah, that's possible. But look at all the teams in their division. It's not going to be easy for Montreal. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they finish at the bottom of their division or at least very close to it this year.
There's a version of history where everybody hits this year, right? Where Kirby Dach absolutely progresses and hits a home run. I'm not saying that is impossible, but to say it's a lock is wrong. That Newhook ends up being the guy that you want him to see. That Josh Anderson bounces back and becomes that power forward that you like to see.
Didn't mention anything about Anderson or Newhook yet. I'm simply saying from Kirby Dach to go from what you're saying, I believe the pressure was actually much greater on him last year personally. He had to show that he can do it. He's a quote unquote bust of a third overall pick when he was with Chicago. He played with Kane and Taves, man. Like, you got to think about it that way. He comes here, now he has a much weaker supporting cast, and he's got to show himself. And he, I believe, definitely showed he is 100% on the right path progression. He is not there yet. He is not at the summit. He's not at the top of the hill. There is more to come. I'm saying, however, that if you took a flyer on him and he had the season he had, I would have to say that that was a successful project that you're currently on. It is a success.
So far, yes. I'm 100%.
But everybody's a so far. You could say the same thing about Caulfield. He was on pace for over 40 goals. He hasn't hit it. Everybody keeps coming back on that knock, and I got to admit to you, got to cop it. It hasn't happened yet.
For sure.
I feel like it's going to happen. Well, I know you're a little bit on the fence.
I agree with that too. That's another thing that's on my you know, there's question marks around, and there's a version of history, as I was about to say, that like everything hits, and Cole Caulfield becomes the 40-goal scorer, that Kirby Dach takes the next step, that Newhook pans out, that everything happens and it works. But there's also a version where these things don't happen, where they regret, or they stay the exact same, and it's just not good enough to get to the next. Cole Caulfield has yet to have one solid 82-game amazing season. There
a little bit of connection issues here. Sorry, everybody.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can just chop in a little bit there, but we think we got the point. I get it 100% what you're saying. There is you don't know. That's the beauty of a new season and the question marks going into it. We don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
All I can do is from my perspective, I think it's better for this team to start gelling now with the core that they have and take a progression forward versus it all going down the tubes again like last year with injuries or whatever, or just simply not being good enough. And then you're finding yourselves in the bottom again.
While I do think that the Montreal Canadiens will be, or there's a possibility that they end up being a bottom, say 7 team, maybe even 7. I do think that for the most part, and I'm hopeful, maybe it's a Habs fan in me and all that, that they'll hit like that 10, 11, 12. And not necessarily, we're not going to make the playoffs, but you're going to see that progression that you're talking about, Matt, and you're going to be like, okay, it's going to be entertaining hockey. And it's going to give us that hope that next year, depending what acquisitions and what moves they make, you look and say, okay, you know what, we're going to be fighting for a middle of probably for the last playoff spot, and then keep taking those leaps as we're going forward. But again, that then comes down to that there's still another couple of seasons for this rebuild. But I think Montreal's
the rebuild isn't over. I'm not saying it's over, but you're like, it has just begun. And I'm more like, we're in the middle of it.
Well, I said it's been one full calendar year. So that's not enough to say, hey, there's a lot of people right now that are like, oh, we're ready for the next step. It's done. The rebuild is done. No. Yes, the cupboard. There's a lot of players. There's a lot of players in the Montreal's depth chart and all that stuff that can come into the NHL and do something. To what that damage is, we don't know. But to say that the rebuild is over or even close to it, no, we're a couple years away. Now, I think that it takes that one player to move the needle enough. Maybe.
That's the main factor. Can some of the guys that are there, could the Caulfields, could the Slafkovskys, could the Suzukis and the Dachs, for example, could they somehow, to Dave's point, it hits and they just blow up and they become the superstar? That helps a lot. Because I think when you talk about the depth that this team has, while I think most will agree that have an understanding of the depths of the majority of the NHL teams, Montreal's in the top. It's not the best possibly, but they're definitely they have a cupboard stocked enough that you can say they're amongst the better teams.
The average side has put them 3 to 6.
There you go. But the problem is they have a ton of guys who are second, third pairing guys. They don't have a guy in their system that is, he's coming and he's going to be like, oh my God, the guy. That's the difference. That's the unfortunate part.
And the thing about prospects is that they have to hit eventually. They have to show up. It's great to have it on paper. And the Canadiens for the last 10 years or 15 years has been the victim of this. Always these amazing prospects in the pipeline. And eventually they just never pan out, or seemingly never seem to pan out. Right? They have one good season. Galchenyuk, 30-goal season. This guy's the future. What happened to him? And you could go down the line with them, right? You could go down the line with all these guys that you're excited about. Kostitsyn, if you want to go even further down the line, people thinking he's but Chris Higgins, future captain of this club, that's even further down the line. But if you want to go closer to history, I mean, there's a bunch of people who you thought, oh, this is going to be the next guy for sure. And that's the thing about this Canadiens roster is you look at it and you look at the depth chart and you're like, wow, okay, they're a ton of like prospects that like can't miss prospects. But they got to not miss, and that's
very
true. Bigger deal than a lot of people. It's everything on paper is fine, but you have to prove it on the ice.
I will say though that the most recently in the most recent years, a lot of their prospects have hit. The only ones where they're lacking is, third overall picks like Kotkaniemi and those. And even at that, can you really say Kotkaniemi is a miss? He's in the NHL. He's being productive. He's just not Brady Tkachuk.
Well, he's a miss for where he was picked. The difference is look at Harvey Pinard. He's a massive hit of where he was picked. He'll never be a top line guy, but he's an NHL player. He signed his contract, but you got him in the 7th round. So of course there's context behind everybody. A lot of these guys were picked late 1st and 2nd rounds, and the odds of these guys hitting. When you look at the Brian Wild posts this a lot, there's like a percentage breakdown of where you're drafted and the percentage of you being an NHLer versus All-Star. The moment you drop out of that 1st round, your All-Star potential goes down to basically 0, and just making the NHL you're under 50%, I think, by a lot. So to your point, Vito, I think recently they've got a lot of guys that definitely look like they're going to ascend. You got the Owen Becks, the Joshua Huas, the Messars. You got all these kind of guys the guys that they've traded for too, like Heineman, and a bunch of these guys that look like they should come. But I don't think any of them have the ceiling to be a top line. And you are missing that. You said it earlier in the episode, and I 100% agree with you. The glaring holes that they have right now is the top banana, top all-star of the team, a top guy on the top line, and your goalie. You got to eventually address that.
Now, you know that this topic is going to trigger some people to bring up Matvei Michkov, right? So let's just prepare ourselves for that because
if they want to.
They can bring him up, and to their point, when you look at him through those highlight videos and some of the things that the scouts have said, yeah, that's a player that Montreal should have in their pipeline. However, now there's a lot of variables to this. There's a lot of things. He's been a healthy scratch for 2 straight games in the KHL. I was going to say,
what clips are they looking at? The ones from last year? Because he hasn't played this year, and that was a big part of apparently why teams were shying away from not being able to control his future. But I really don't want to dive to Matvei Michkov conversation right now. I did have one other thing I wanted to ask you boys, because, obviously it's September, and September means preseason hockey, and I wanted to know your take about preseason. What do you feel about preseason? Is it too long? Is it long enough? Should it be shorter? Does it matter? Should people read into it? Is it really just throw a bunch of things out there and see? Is there merits to it? What do you guys think? How do you feel about preseason hockey?
I think it's too long, personally. They should shorten it. There's the risk of injury, too. Now, I get it. At the beginning, the first few games of the preseason, it's most of the young kids playing, but they still have to meet a certain requirement of number of NHL players on the ice. I think it's way too long. It's like just get right into either get into the NHL games right away, or do a preseason of a max 3-4 games just to get everybody's legs going a little bit and call it a day. Why did they go so long? They're basically starting, I think it's last week of September, and the NHL season doesn't start till like October 10th.
I think it's 8 games. Is it 8 games?
They have 6 games. They have 6 preseason games that I see here. Okay. They play the Devils, the Senators, the Leafs twice, 3 times, and then the Sens again, and that's it. So
6 games.
I
feel like there were more before. Did they actually reduce them?
No, yeah, I think they did. There was more, but it's
so you want even less than 6?
3 games, 4 max.
3 games.
Like and you're talking about it's basically you have training camp, then you jump into these preseason games just to see who the heck is going to fit into the thing. Then you got a 10-game window where you could keep some of these players before you have to make a decision on them. Just get the damn thing going.
The NHL preseason, I think, is best of all the sports because, like, NFL preseason is I find it's interesting, but compared to forget spring training and baseball and stuff like that, and I think the NHL is interesting because you get to see these guys that they just drafted in a Canadiens lineup, and some guys, these prospects, you get to see them for a little bit against other teams, and I think it's it keeps my interest a little bit. But 6 games is perfect. I think 6 games is like the perfect slot. I think it goes from September 25th to October 2nd, really, and then there's like a game later on against the Senators that's like a week later. But other than that, it's like 5 games in 5 days. Like, that's fine with me. I think you could pull that off, and I think that it's okay. I mean, it gives you the opportunity to see more than so than in other sports standouts, right? Someone who really steals a spot in the lineup in these preseason games, where in other sports, I mean, your roster is pretty much set when you get there. There's no one really blowing you away, and even if they do, they're likely to start the season in the minors. I'm okay with the preseason how it is, and it's weird saying that because it's like I would never really have much interest in watching a preseason game, but I see the value in it for people who are involved with the team.
I got no patience with this.
I actually thought it was longer than 6 games. I'll be honest with you. You mentioned 6. I was like, did they shrink it recently? Because I remember it going on forever.
I could be wrong. I think it used to be 8 games.
I thought it was 8 too. So 6 automatically makes it more palatable to me because I thought it was more. To Vito's point, I would maybe prefer a little less, maybe not 3, perhaps give it like 5 games, but 5. Like closer to the season. So there's not a bit of a gap. Like it's,
okay. So
something like that.
Without going through the entire list of who's going to be invited to the training camp in the preseason, who do you think is going to be your player that stands out that qualifies, not for the whole season, but for the 10 games?
Whew. Good question. I don't know if there's anybody.
Well, off the top of my head, there's 3 players.
I think Reinbacher sticks for 10 games.
I don't think so. Reinbacher's going back home.
No, he'll go back home, but I think they might unless he looks completely out of place in the preseason, if he shows why he was picked 5th overall, I'd be surprised they send him back. I think he does the 10 games and then they send him back.
But where do you fit him in the roster, in the lineup? They have so many players.
That's why I don't think he does the 10 games.
But guys, sit.
Okay, so either way, you're hopeful it's Reinbacher, or
I don't know. Hopeful. I mean, you're telling me who do I think it is? I think it's him. Who am I hopeful for?
I think it's going to come down to 3 players, and one of them might surprise some people.
Okay, give it to us. Who is it?
All right. So I think Heineman's a candidate.
Yeah, Heineman. Yes.
Owen Beck is the other candidate, and William Trudeau is the other one. Those are the 3 guys that have a chance, in my opinion. The rest of them are either all Laval bound, they're all going back to the juniors, they're all going back overseas, whatever they
wait. A chance to do the 10 games and then go back, or a chance to make the roster?
No, a chance to
stick around for the 10 games.
Stand out during the preseason and stick around for 10 games, and then they'll make a decision. Is what I said.
Okay.
Right. Whether the decision's to stay with the team or send them out, they're going to hit the 10 games. That was the focus for me. Is those 10 games?
That's fair. Heineman's a great pick. I think Heineman has a really good chance. I think that's a really smart pick right there. I would agree.
Then I have one other question for you.
Owen Beck. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just like him back down again. Another.
Well, I wanted to play a lot of minutes because right now, it's congested in Montreal. Unless they make another move, there's too many players right now.
They still have to. I mean, even if all these guys are standouts, I mean, you're sitting. You'd have to sit roster players. They have too many guys.
You have Yulon in there too. You have Sean Farrell. There's a million people who could just. Where are all these guys going to play? I just don't know. You're kind of almost banking on injuries at this point.
Well, you're going to see some players because they got to get to 23 players. Right now, there's 25 on their active roster, so there's players going down on waivers. Or they're going to move them for future considerations, the famous future considerations.
But those are not moves you see usually at around training camp because all the teams are strapped.
No, you're right, Dave. But I said this, I think it was the last episode or one before, where typically what ends up happening is, as you all know, whether it's preseason, whether it's the start of the season, the first 15 games, players get hurt. Typically they get hurt, they overtrain, whatever the case may be. And all of a sudden, there's certain players, teams in the standings that don't want to lose ground, and they go into a minor acquisition of some kind just to keep it going, to keeping things afloat. There are certain teams that I've gone through their rosters, whether it's on cap friendly or a daily face-off, whatever, that are missing, whether it's a right-handed defenseman, a depth right-handed defenseman, or a depth third, fourth liners, whatever the case may be. And guess what? Montreal's got a few of them. So there might be some moves that happen like that, but they'd be minor. Like, don't expect anything grand. The only big move that I think everybody's keeping an eye on is what happens with Casey DeSmith. But
yeah, I think that's fair too.
Right.
Yeah, so that's because he mentioned it. But I'm curious, what's your question? You said you had a question. What's your question?
Slafkovsky. Does he progress this year? Does he do you guys if so, what do you expect his point totals to be by the end of the season? Or what would you be satisfied with from Slafkovsky?
I think we talked about this last time too. But yes, he progresses. He progresses 100%. He progresses. As long as he doesn't get hurt, knock wood, he doesn't get hurt.
It's always about barring injury, right?
All right. So barring injury, yes, he progresses. And what would I be happy with? I'd be happy with 43 points.
What the heck was that?
I love it. I love it. I mean, it's hard not to progress from what he had 10 points last year, 4 goals, 10 points. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to. I think so. No, did he not? Maybe I'm wrong, but
you might be right.
It's hard not to progress from that. So to me, I don't know. I think I'd be happy with 40 points. I think it might be a bit of a stretch. It depends on where he plays in the lineup, right? If he's going to be settled on that fourth line, and don't expect too much production from him.
I don't think this management does that. No,
the lowest is going to be his third line. Lowest.
You don't know. You don't know if he struggles right out the gate. If you know what I mean. If some players are just playing better and deserve a higher spot on the roster, he's one of those guys that you wouldn't get killed to put him back onto that fourth line. And him play a chunk of change in that 10, 15 games on that fourth line. I don't see that as an impossibility, and that would affect his production. But yeah, I mean, anything better than 10 points, I'll take. I think I just want to see him be a factor on the ice and show a little bit of why he was. This guy is not like a 15th. He's a first overall pick. You know what I mean? So there are, whether you like it or not, there are expectations that come with it. And you're in year 2 now. Yes, you lost half the season last year because of injury, but you're in year 2 now. Let's see what you got.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm gonna put my neck out on this one, and I'm gonna say,
oh boy,
I say he's going to
hit Vito's crazy prediction time.
I'm like, okay, is he not going to progress? What's your prediction?
48 points, 23 goals.
23 goals. Wow.
He'll hit 23 goals this season.
All right.
Okay. So obvious progression then. That's a clear.
Yeah. Well, I knew he was going to progress anyways. To me,
he told you. Called you up. Said, hey, Vito, it's Slav. I want you and all the Get Puck listeners to know I'm progressing this year. Also, by the way, I'm going for 23 goals.
You see how he's training? From what I read, too, he shed a bit of that weight that he put on that he apparently thought that he needed that weight to be in the NHL.
He's a child still. I know it doesn't look like it. I know he looks like a Terminator. I know. But he is a child. He's going to get leaner. He's going to get more muscular. He's going to get faster. He's going to get stronger every single year. He is.
I just want more interviews from him. I want more interviews from him.
Well, okay, yeah, the guys. He got some great sound bits too. But I think everybody needs to get on this bandwagon. You got it's not a guarantee, as nothing in life is, but it is very certain. As long as he stays 70 or healthy, points. He is going to be a factor on this team. He is going to be more in the top 6 than he will be in the bottom 6 in this upcoming season. And I think 40 points is a minimum to be happy. I would love and expect more than that. I'm being conservative because I keep getting burnt with these predictions, so I'm saying 43. But you got some. Hey man, you got public. Who was it? I don't know, ESPN or whoever it was. But somebody came out and they were doing the point totals that they predicted. They have Slav down for 50 points. So we're not crazy. You got professionals out there that are suggesting that this is possible. I think it happens. I think we're going to see a 40-plus total season in his second year without question. Without question.
I love it. I love the confidence you guys have. I love the optimism, the confidence. I love it all. I love it all.
It's a new season, baby. You got to be excited. Come on now. We're in September. Hockey is.
You know what we're going to do?
Smell it. It's so close.
You know what? We're going to do the Athletic, NHL. They all do their their projections for people's total, for players' totals and whatever. We're going to do it for the Habs. That's what I said. We're going to do each of us. We're going to have our own list of stats and what we project the Habs players to get. And at the end of the season, we'll do another episode where we see how far off were we.
We could do a Google Doc and we'll share it instead, because I'm sure we've gone through this a couple times already. We'll post it so it's there black and white for people to see. We've done over-unders, but
we never said specific numbers, goals, and all that stuff.
Yes, I think fair. So we'll definitely do that. We'll throw it down. We'll put it in a Google Doc and we'll make it visible for everybody to come check it out. We'll post it on our socials. So definitely keep an eye out for that, because I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, as always, we throw the questions to you guys, our listeners out there. And again, we appreciate every single one of you. And my little shtick real fast, if you haven't already, please consider like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Thanks very much. What do you think about Slav? Do you think his point totals is 40 a decent benchmark to put him at? Is it too high? Is it too low? What are your expectations? What do you think is going to happen, barring injury, of course? And then let us know what you think about preseason too. Do you guys like it? Do you follow it religiously? Do you kind of like just catch up on it the next day? Do you watch the full games? Is it interesting to you? Too long, too short? These are all things that are pretty exciting to us that we'd like to know about and see in the comments below. Otherwise, unless you gentlemen have anything else you want to add.
Welcome back, Dave.
Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
More Dave. I think we speak on behalf of everybody. More Dave. Always more Dave. So for Mr. Trentadue and for Vito, I'm Matt. Thanks for listening. And this was Get Pucked.